What if the voice you've been trying to silence is the only one telling the truth? What if your darkness isn't the enemy, but the part of you still awake? What if the pain you keep pushing down is the map back to your soul? What if everything you've ignored, feared, and buried is waiting to save you? Imagine this, a forgotten cave beneath your ribs. A voice echoes softly in the shadows, speaking in the language of wounds and memories. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg. It simply waits, like a mirror in the dark, offering reflection, not judgment. Each breath inside feels like you're inhaling your past. The walls pulse with memories you thought you'd escaped. And at the center is a chair, empty, but shaped exactly like you. A man once tried to bury his grief so deeply, he forgot it had a name. But every night the silence would whisper it back into his dreams, not to torment him, but to remind him, truth doesn't disappear. It only hides in the dark until you're ready. Tonight, you don't have to be brave. You just have to be still. Let the voice inside speak. You're not the one that lies to fit in, not the one that performs to survive, but the one buried under fear, shame, and silence. The one that knows what you need. Welcome to UMBRA INSIGHT, where shadow psychology becomes the gateway to dark motivation. This is not just a meditation. This is a reckoning.
We weren't taught to listen to the silence inside us. We were taught to run from it, to label it overthinking, to sedate it with noise, with screens, with people, with praise. But silence has never been the enemy. It's been the waiting room for truth. Shadow psychology, as Carl Jung taught us, is not about becoming someone better. It's about becoming someone whole. And to become whole, we must first sit with the parts of ourselves we've abandoned. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The voice in the dark. It is the unconscious. It is the sum of your wounds, your desires, your rejections, and your truths, tied together like a tangle of roots beneath the tree of your identity. Dark meditation, then, is not about emptying the mind. It's about entering the cave where your mind has locked away the truths it thought were too painful to carry. Not to destroy you, but to free you. Let me give you 2 moments. One real, one imagined. There was a woman who always smiled, always fine, until one day during a meditation, a single image surfaced, a door behind it. The bedroom of her childhood, the moment she first learned to pretend. Her body trembled, her breath shortened, and she wept, not because she was broken, but because for the first time in years she had stopped lying to herself. She didn't need a therapist to tell her the truth. Her shadow did. In silence, in imagery, in emotion. Now picture this. A man in a suit, powerful, respected. Everyone listens when he speaks, but at night he dreams of drowning. He doesn't tell anyone, but deep down he knows he's drowning in expectations, in roles, in unspoken grief. And each time he silences the dream, the water rises. What he needs isn't more success. It's stillness, stillness to finally ask himself, whose life am I actually living? This is where dark motivation begins. Not from hype, not from shouting, but from recognition. You cannot fight a monster you won't look at. And your shadow, it's not a monster until you keep pretending it doesn't exist. Ask yourself now, have you ever ignored a voice inside just because it scared you? What if that fear wasn't danger, but direction? What would happen if you actually listened? Tonight's meditation isn't here to fix you. It's here to reintroduce you to the version of yourself you buried to survive. The you who remembers, the you who aches, the you who knows. That voice in the dark. It's not a whisper of destruction. It's a call to wholeness. Welcome back to yourself. You're not late. You're right on time. His name was Ethan, a man of reputation, success, and control. By the world's standards, he had made it. CEO by 38, featured in magazines, invited to speak at panels about leadership in chaos. But no one asked what his chaos looked like when the lights turned off. Ethan had a ritual. He'd wake up every night at 3:13 a.m., not 3:10. Not 3:15, always 3:13. The number haunted him. He'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with no reason. The silence would press in like a weight, and in that silence, a voice, not a scream, but a slow, steady hum, would whisper, "You're not who you think you are." He never spoke of it, not to his wife, not to his therapist, not even to himself. During the day he was composed, respected, strategic, but at night his dreams were filled with one recurring image, a room without windows, and a boy curled in the corner, silent, shaking, forgotten. He thought it was just stress, work, sleep cycles, cortisol. But deep down, a truth lingered like smoke after fire. Ethan wasn't dreaming of a stranger. He was dreaming of himself. And that room was real. One night, unable to take it anymore, Ethan stayed awake. He sat in silence. No phone, no music, just darkness. And then he heard it, the voice. Not outside, but inside. Low, measured, familiar. It didn't speak in language. It spoke in memory. Suddenly, he was back at 9 years old, locked in that windowless basement, as punishment for crying after his father died. He had cried once, and it cost him years of silence. The adult Ethan had become a master of suppression. He'd built empires of logic and discipline to silence that voice, to become what the world celebrated, a man who didn't feel. But tonight, the silence broke him open. Tears came, not in bursts, but like rain long awaited by a droughted land. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from remembrance. He saw the boy in the corner of his mind, still waiting, still believing that to feel was to be weak. Ethan knelt beside him, not physically, but spiritually, and for the first time, he didn't try to fix, didn't try to silence. He just listened. The boy spoke with no words. "You left me here, but I never left you." That night, Ethan didn't fall asleep. He fell inward, into memory, into pain, into truth. The next morning, Ethan didn't meditate. He mourned. He took a walk with no destination. He watched the sky like he hadn't in years. He sat at a cafe and didn't check his phone. Not once. Something had changed. The panic was gone, not because it had been defeated, but because it had been heard. Ethan began a new ritual. At 3:13 a.m., he would no longer wake up in dread. He would sit up, light a single candle, and ask one question: what part of me am I still ignoring? Sometimes no answer came, sometimes an image, sometimes a word, but always a presence. He didn't become more Zen, he became more whole. He still worked, still led, but now, when people asked how he succeeded, he gave them a different answer. I started listening to the one part of me I feared most. His success no longer felt like armor. It felt like integration. He spoke softer, moved slower, loved deeper. Because once you've sat in the dark with your shadow, you never look at light the same way again. That boy in the room, he still visits Ethan in dreams. But now, he's standing by the door, not curled in the corner. And Ethan, he's not afraid of the dark anymore. He calls it home. There's a version of you that you've never fully met. Not because it's hiding, but because you've been too busy performing someone else. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Not a villain, not a flaw, just the side of you that's been waiting in silence. It's the face behind your mask, the fire beneath your control, the grief beneath your laughter. Jung said everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied, the blacker and denser it is. What you suppress doesn't vanish, it grows teeth. Your anger doesn't die when ignored. It finds other voices, sarcasm, bitterness, numbness. Your pain doesn't dissolve when avoided. It lives in your shoulders, your stomach, your dreams. Your truth doesn't fade with silence. It just becomes harder to speak. But your shadow isn't asking to be purged. It's asking to be welcomed. I knew someone once. Brilliant, accomplished, magnetic. She walked into rooms like light, walked into darkness, but every vacation made her restless. Stillness made her sweat. She had learned early that safety was earned, that to rest was to risk everything. When she was a child, she watched her mother, quiet, defeated, crying behind the fridge after losing her job. And in that tiny moment she made a vow without words. I will never be weak. So she became untouchable, indispensable, perfect. But beneath the empire of her achievements was a little girl still afraid that if she stopped, it would all collapse. It wasn't therapy that cracked the armor. It was silence, a breath, a memory. And when she finally sat with it, let it tremble, let it speak, she realized that vow wasn't truth, it was trauma. And now, when she rests, she no longer feels guilt, she feels grace. Another man I knew, gentle, kind, always there, the kind of person everyone leaned on, except himself. He thought his exhaustion meant he was broken. He couldn't explain why simple requests made him want to scream. He thought he was losing compassion. But compassion without boundaries isn't love. It's self-erasure. He had learned that to say no meant to be left, that silence was safer than conflict. So he buried his needs, and they buried him back. One night, he wrote a letter he never sent. It said, I'm tired of being the safe space for everyone while I sleep alone with my resentment. That letter was his turning point. Not because he sent it, but because he wrote it. Sometimes, the act of admitting is all the shadow ever wanted. He began saying no, quietly, not as rebellion, but as restoration. He didn't lose anyone. He found himself. You see, the shadow doesn't sabotage you. Silence does. Avoidance does. Performance does. When you sit with the part of you you feared, you don't fall apart. You fall back into alignment. So ask yourself, when was the last time you felt something without trying to fix it? When did you last name your anger without guilt, your sorrow without shame, your desire without censorship? What if the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're weak, but because you've been carrying parts of yourself you've refused to claim? The shadow doesn't need you to solve it. It needs you to stop lying about it. And when you do, when you walk into that darkness, not as a victim but as a witness, you become whole. This isn't philosophy. This is physics of the soul, because what you don't integrate will always find a way to lead you. Let it lead you home. Before you begin, let everything fall away. The noise, the urgency, the mask. This is not a meditation to silence your mind. It's a return to the voice you buried when the world got too loud. So first, find a space where sound cannot reach you, where the walls hold no echoes, no screens, no fluorescent light pretending to be day, just you and the hush of what's been waiting. Sit or lie down, not like a soldier in posture, but like a child curling back into the womb of silence. Comfort isn't a luxury here. It's a signal of safety. If you have a candle, light it, watch the flame breathe. Then gently blow it out. Let darkness greet you. Let it wrap around you like a cocoon spun from forgotten lullabies. Let your breath deepen, not to perform but to feel. Now in this silence, ask the question that's been waiting to be asked. What am I afraid to hear? You don't need to say it aloud. You don't even need to know what it means. Let the question hang in the air, like smoke from a fire you didn't know was still burning. Don't chase thoughts. Don't analyze. Just wait. The answer might come as a memory. A face, a room, or maybe a weight in your chest with no name. Let it come. If your mind gives you an image, a door, a forest, a younger version of yourself, follow it. Don't control it. Let it lead. Ask softly, what are you here to show me? You're not looking for visions. You're listening for truth. The kind that doesn't shout but stands in the corner, waiting to be seen. Maybe you'll find yourself back in a place you'd forgotten. Maybe you'll hear a sentence you once tried to forget. Maybe your body will shake, not from fear but from memory. Whatever rises, welcome it, not with force but with witness. You're not here to fix anything. You're here to feel what's always been asking to be felt. If emotion comes, let it. Tears are not failure. They are language. If stillness comes, honor it. Not every session is thunder. Sometimes the shadow only needs your presence, not your intervention. And when the moment feels complete, when the silence begins to settle like ash after fire, bring your hand to your chest. Whisper not to the world, but to the part of you that finally spoke. I see you. I'll be back. Hold that silence for one more breath, and then another, until you feel the presence of something you had forgotten, yourself. You've entered a place most never do. Honor that. Don't rush to interpret. Let the echo linger. And when you rise, don't leave the shadow behind. Let it walk beside you now, not as something to fight, but as something to learn from. This practice is not about controlling the dark. It's about becoming safe in it. Do it again tomorrow and the day after that, not to become perfect, but to become whole.
Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. The voice in the dark has spoken. But what did it reveal? Let's not rush to answer. Let's sit with what was stirred. Here are 4 questions I want you to carry into the silence. What part of you have you buried, simply because no one else could hold it? What do you secretly grieve that you pretend never happened? What truth have you never said aloud because you're afraid it might break you? What emotion have you judged so harshly it had to disguise itself just to be felt?
These questions aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be held like a wound still fresh, held like a photograph from a time you never talk about, held like a version of you that still believes they're not enough. Reflection is not analysis, it's attention, and when you turn your attention inward without judgment, you begin to uncover a language the mind forgot. But the soul never stopped speaking. Here's what reflection looks like in the dark. A sensation arises, tightness in your throat. Instead of fixing it, you ask, when was the first time I wasn't allowed to speak? You feel heat in your chest. You follow it. You remember the argument. The silence that followed, the way your apology became a pattern. Now the heat has a name. It's not just emotion, it's information. This is what it means to let the shadow teach you. Sometimes reflection feels like mourning. You're grieving not only what happened, but who you had to become to survive it. Other times reflection feels like revolt. You finally feel the anger you never gave yourself permission to feel. And that anger isn't destruction, it's resurrection. You are not here to figure out your shadow. You are here to become the version of yourself that no longer runs from it. This kind of reflection is sacred. It doesn't happen on accident. It happens when you choose to sit still in the places most people avoid. Places like regret, places like shame, places like truth. But let me tell you a secret. Once you've sat in the dark long enough, you stop fearing it, because in that darkness you begin to see, not with your eyes, but with your presence. You begin to notice the moment you clench your jaw every time you're about to speak your truth, the ache in your shoulders when you say yes to something you don't want, the flicker in your chest when someone asks, "Are you okay?" and you lie. These are not flaws. They are compasses. They point to the exact place your shadow wants to be seen. They are invitations to pause, to reflect, to reintroduce yourself to yourself. So let's end this part with a final offering. Not a rule, not a demand, but a reflection. If your shadow could speak plainly tonight, without fear of being judged, what would it say? Would it beg to be heard? Would it scream? Would it whisper forgiveness? Or would it simply ask, "Will you come back tomorrow?" If you said yes, what might change? Her name was Alina, 26, a writer, a quiet one, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, but hollow. She had spent her whole life being the good girl, polite, helpful, emotionally convenient. But when no one was around, she would cry without knowing why. Not shaking, just a silent stream of grief that never explained itself. One night, a friend sent her the video, Dark Meditation. Listen to the voice in the dark. She didn't think much of it. She lit one candle, then blew it out, sat in silence, alone, and asked the question, what am I afraid to hear? At first, nothing, just her heartbeat, like thunder in a cave. Then, the memory. The hallway, age 7. She's standing at the bedroom door of her father. He's yelling. Her mother is crying. She wants to speak, but the words die in her throat. She remembers swallowing the scream. She remembers hiding under the table. She remembers thinking, if I'm quiet, maybe it won't get worse. And so she became quiet forever. The image came with a sensation, her throat tightening, her chest closing. A scream trapped for almost 20 years. She felt panic. Her breath raced. She almost stopped the meditation. But some instinct kept her there. She placed her hand over her heart and whispered, I see you. And suddenly, everything loosened. She cried, but not like before. This time, it was release. Not despair. It was the scream finally finding a way out, not as noise but as truth. The next day she wrote the first poem she had written in months. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it was hers. That night she meditated again. No visions, no voices, just stillness and something softer. The next week, she told her mother about that memory. They didn't cry together. They didn't hug. But her mother said, I always wondered if you remembered. Alina didn't need to fix the past. She just needed to acknowledge it. And since that moment, she's never feared the silence again. Because now she knows. The silence doesn't mean nothing. It means something is finally safe enough to speak. She wrote this in her journal one night, and I want you to hear it too. My darkness was never cruel. It was just unheard. I thought healing meant becoming light, but now I know it means becoming whole. You've just walked through a doorway most people never find. You didn't meditate to escape. You entered the dark to remember. From Ethan's buried grief to Alina's silent scream. From your own breathless questions to the flickers of memory. This was more than a guided meditation. It was a return. A return to the version of you that didn't need fixing. Only listening. You sat with your shadow, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. And in that stillness, you heard what your soul's been whispering for years. I'm still here, and I remember everything.
Now it's your turn to carry this voice forward. If this journey stirred something inside you, if you felt a memory resurface, or a silence begin to speak, then don't stop here. Subscribe to UMBRA INSIGHT, the home of shadow psychology, dark motivation, and dark meditations like this. Here, we don't chase positivity. We embrace wholeness. We don't deny the dark. We learn from it. Dive deeper into your inner world with playlists like Dark Meditations, Meet Your Inner Self, Whispers of the Shadow, Unveil Hidden Truths, Light in the darkness. Transform your shadow. This isn't self-help. It's self-reclamation. If you're ready to meet more of your truth, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below. What did your shadow say tonight? And remember, you're not alone in this. There's an entire world waiting in the dark to welcome you home. Let me leave you with a thought that may shake you. Maybe your negative emotions aren't broken parts to fix, but sacred signals your false self was never meant to survive. Read that again. You don't need to silence your shadow. You need to sit with it, breathe with it, and let it teach you. And when it does, you will no longer fear the dark. You will walk through it like a flame through fog, still, present, whole. This was not a meditation. This was an awakening, and it's only just begun.